In the time it takes a lot of jurisdictions to be able to write their regulations, we were able to get an industry completely up and running. That technology should lead and regulation should adapt. That it was time to take the handcuffs off the industry. That the illegal and unregulated market was growing so fast and becoming so significant that the regulated market was on the border of becoming irrelevant. I had a great job at GLI. I'd had a great career. I really wasn't looking to do anything else, but the opportunity to have the resources that were available in the UAE and really have almost a blank canvas to create a regulatory agency from scratch was compelling.
This podcast is sponsored by Pragmatic Solutions, the player account management platform chosen by today's smart betting and gaming operators. Don't let technical constraints delay you from achieving your business goals. Expand your business, boost your margins, and dominate the market in any leading regulated jurisdiction with our powerful, flexible, and secure iGaming platform. Enjoy its extensive marketing tools, compliance protection, real-time data, and a wide portfolio of over 1,000 industry providers. It's time to upgrade your technology. Let Pragmatic Solutions show you the modern approach. Visit pragmatic.solutions and join the smart thinkers.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
In this episode with Kevin Mullally, the former CEO for the General Commercial Gaming Regulatory Authority, the GCGRA, the regulator that's overseeing gambling in the UAE, and the current CEO for the International Association of Gambling Regulators, we will review the current state of the UAE's iGaming market and what lies ahead. The discussion today will focus on the evolving regulatory framework, early market milestones, and industry expectations, offering first-hand insights into how one of the world's most closely watched new gaming jurisdictions is currently shaping up. So Kevin, it's great to have you here on the podcast today. And obviously you had a rare opportunity to build a gaming regulator from ground up. When you began designing the framework for the GCGRA, what were the kind of core principles that guided how that system would be structured?
The opportunity in the UAE, I had a great job at GLI. I'd had a great career. I really wasn't looking to do anything else, but the opportunity to have the resources that were available in the UAE and really have almost a blank canvas to create a regulatory agency from scratch was compelling. I'd spent over 30 years either being a regulator or advising regulators. I'd been in nearly every jurisdiction in the world. And, the foundation of gaming regulation were in very sound principles, but they were also based on some very different market dynamics. So the ability to go in and establish an agency and build processes and build a team to execute those processes. It was really founded in the core principle that if for every requirement you impose on the industry, you're able to very clearly and articulately tell them what risk we're trying to mitigate or what public benefit we're trying to promote by making you do this thing. And then how are we going to measure you? And what outcomes do we expect? So when we ask you to file this report, hire and train these people, draft this process or this internal control procedure, deploy this technology, file this report. What are we trying to achieve by making you do that? What are we going to do with that data? How are we going to validate that you've hired and trained these people? How are we going to verify that you're following that process? How are we going to ensure that that technology is working the way it's supposed to? And then what outcomes do we expect from that? And that's really the way everything was constructed. And if that is done successfully, then conflict should be minimized, because we should all agree these are worthy risks of being mitigated or public benefits that we should embrace, and that we should all be seeking collectively to achieve compliance. And so that was really the framework we built. And I think we did so very successfully. It was embraced by everybody that we engaged with, every prospective licensee, every licensee. And we're really proud of the framework.
Brilliant. And Kevin, you took the approach to kind of modernize the traditional kind of framework for that we see in other regulatory bodies. Can you talk about that? As you mentioned before, you have experience with working with regulators across the globe. Perhaps regulators generally are not that fast moving sometimes, but you took the approach that you wanted to perhaps be a bit more business friendly in how you set up the regulation over in the UAE. Can you talk about how you approach the modernization of this regulatory framework that GCGRA created?
Yeah, when I was consulting, the first, literally almost without exception, the first question out of either the regulator or the legislators or the governor's office or the somebody from Parliament's mouth was, who does it the best? Who's the gold standard? Just tell us who does that and we'll just do what they do. And the problem with that is there is not really a gold standard. There are tried and tested techniques and concepts, but every jurisdiction is different. It's got different policy objectives. Some jurisdictions need tax revenue, some jurisdictions need jobs, others need to redevelop blighted areas. There's a wide variety of uses for the gaming industry. And so I think you really need to get down to those core issues first. And then the other thing that I think has haunted the gaming industry over the years is this really tilt towards enforcement, that regulators don't feel like they're doing a good job unless they're catching somebody doing something wrong and imposing some type of really harsh penalty on them. And I don't think that's because regulators are inherently bad people. I think it's because they're pushed that way because of the media or because of pressure from policymakers to show that they're being tough on the industry. And so what we really looked to do was to build around that construct of a focus on compliance and to be able to collect data to demonstrate that we were actually protecting consumers, that we were facilitating whatever the policy objectives of the jurisdiction were. If you're trying to raise revenue, show that you're efficiently raising revenue and creating jobs. If you're trying to redevelop blighted areas, make sure that you have evidence showing that. And I think in the jurisdictions I've been involved in, without exception, almost that data is very compelling, but it gets lost in the narrative. So our focus was really on how do you weave the regulatory construct to reflect those shared business and policy goals. Because if you have an effective operator selection process, it should be aligned to those policy goals, and the operator should be committed to and best equipped to achieve those policy goals. So I think it's all very achievable. It's just how do you do it, and then how do you wrap some technology around it to make it more efficient and consistent.
And talk more about those policies that the government in the UAE came in with. Why essentially they were looking to regulate the industry? Because obviously gaming in the UAE is coming in somewhat late in comparison to most other jurisdictions. There's a lot of culture aspect and so on involved in these jurisdictions as well. What is the aim of the policymakers to achieve through this regulation?
Yeah. So, the UAE is a wonderful country. It's safe, it's clean, it's healthy. The healthcare is incredible. People trust the government. And so there weren't really a lot of problems to solve. It was really to augment what they were already doing incredibly well. They play the long game better than any jurisdiction I've ever seen. They have a 2030, I think it's a 2031 plan that they have largely achieved and will achieve. They have a Vision 2050 plan that they will achieve. They've consistently exhibited that they can engage in very thoughtful, carefully plotted long-term plans and achieve those results. And so what gaming was really intended to do was to diversify the economy, to augment their already very successful gaming industry, and to bring some new skills to the marketplace. And so the number of operators was going to be very limited, but it was going to be focused on really high quality. And it wasn't really about revenue. I mean, the tax rate is going to be very favorable because the UAE has money. It's really about how can we offer consumers the best possible product and yet create something new and compelling that the rest of the world doesn't have, and create new industries here. So with the online market, it was really focused on, can we get homegrown operators, or at least can we get gaming technology providers that will support our operators? And, although the Wynn with the land-based facility is not a UAE company, the majority stakeholder in that project, as has been publicly disclosed, is the local Ras Al Khaimah government. And so everything is really done to diversify the economy, to build the ecosystem and build on that tourism framework. And so we constructed our regulatory structure along those lines. How could we use technology to make sure that the operator, the vendors, and the regulator are all looking at the same data? They have clear understandings of what is required of them, why it's required of them, how they're going to be measured, and what outcomes do we expect from those requirements. And then it was just a process of getting the data to be able to prove that case. And I think if regulators around the world had that, it eases this pressure on them to be this enforcement-centric thing, to impose these big fines, because they have all this data to show, look, we have a healthy industry. It's achieving the policy objectives. Consumers are being protected, and we have the data to prove it.
Right. It seems almost like the UAE in general, when it decides to regulate an industry or attack a particular niche, that it is this kind of ecosystem approach that it's taking to create this industry and this ecosystem locally within the jurisdiction. So it seems almost like this is an extension of the general strategy of the UAE when they decide to enter a new industry in general. Do you get that feeling as well, that this is pretty aligned with the strategy of other industries as well that the UAE is focusing on?
Yeah. The great thing about living in the UAE is things just work. It's very technology driven. Everything that you have to do, kind of the things that you hate to do, like register your car, get a driver's license, pay your taxes, pay your utility bill, get your health care. It's all on your phone. It's all very easily accessible. Things that take half a day here in the United States are done in minutes there. And so we were really just trying to align with what was already happening. The other thing is, in every other jurisdiction I've worked in, you always have other stakeholders outside the regulatory body that want to be involved. And a lot of times it's because gaming has money and it's in the news a lot. So they're attracted to the money and the notoriety. I tell you what, I met with nearly every ministry in the UAE, and every single time it was, how can we help you? We're here to support you. We have your back. Everybody's very aligned to the success of the UAE, and there's little to no ego involved in any of it. We're all trying to work together.
Yeah, interesting to hear, Kevin. And I would like to just dive into, obviously, we speak about the gambling regulation in the UAE today. Really and truly is two separate sectors here, the land-based sector and the online gambling sector as well. And we host a community within Next.io that is dedicated to conversations around gaming in UAE and the development in the region. And there's always a bit unclarity, let's say, in where certain parts of the regulation is heading and where the industry is heading. So I was thinking just to dive into these two verticals today to really clear up some perhaps misunderstandings and bring some clarity into where the market is going and where the opportunities are perhaps. So if we start on the land-based side, obviously UAE is one country, but it's made up obviously of different emirates. And as far as I understand, each emirate have kind of their own interpretation or their own strategy and how they are going about and implementing the GCGRA's framework. Can you talk first and foremost about what does the landscape look on the land-based side today? Which Emirates are looking to allow licenses for land-based casinos, and where are we currently?
Yeah, it's a good description, Pierre. So the UAE is made up of seven Emirates. It's one very unified country, but seven different. So they have federal laws, and then each Emirate has its own level of governance on things that aren't federal. So it's, similar to a lot of places in the world. So think of an emirate as a state, a parish, a province, depending on where you're from in the world. And the operator selection process, both for land-based and online, is driven by each emirate. So an operator, the GCGRA, the regulatory body, doesn't even really engage. I mean, we'll engage with prospective operators and tell them about what will be expected of them in the regulatory framework. But we don't really start the licensing process until an emirate has notified the GCGRA, this is our operator, because that's totally an emirate decision. And so each emirate is, as you might expect, is going about it a little different way and at a little different pace. Some may choose not to participate at all. Some may wait for the market to develop a little bit, and others are proceeding forward, even though, which is typical, I think, in other places in the world that I've worked. They don't always announce what they're doing until they're ready to do it, but there are various processes going on.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And so currently, just again on the land-based side of things, Ras Al Khaimah, for example, there are casinos being built in this jurisdiction. Talk about what licenses are approved currently, and in which Emirates are things happening currently on the land-based side?
Yeah, well, I think one of the great accomplishments of my team and the leadership of the GCGRA was that we were able to do this very, very quickly. We were able to build the regulatory structure in less than 6 months. We were able to shut down the unauthorized lottery operators within that time frame, announce a process for a new lottery operator selection process, and license that lottery operator in less than a year. The operator, and we were able to license the Wynn, which had already been announced before the creation of the GCGRA, in less than a year. The Wynn is well under construction, on pace to open in April of 2027. And the lottery operator went live in less than 1 year, and the GCGRA became profitable in less than 18 months, and the GCGRA became profitable. So in the time it takes a lot of jurisdictions to be able to write their regulations, we were able to get an industry completely up and running and have many licensed gaming-related vendors. And then the first online full gaming online casino and sports wagering operator launched in January of this year. And additional opportunities will become available as Emirates make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about the online part for a moment. So even within the online gambling industry, we have two separate sectors in the B2B side and the B2C side, right? So if I understand things correctly, the idea is to issue maximum one B2C license per Emirate, and currently only a few Emirates are active, let's say, with this one license. Can you clarify this maybe for the audience as well? Because I know there's been a lot of conversations whether that is what is actually happening or if there are several licenses. And can you talk to us, first and foremost, on the B2C side, exactly what is the current lay of the land?
Yeah. So the only publicly announced Emirate selections are the Wynn and Ras Al Khaimah, the lottery, which is there's one national lottery. There were two pre-existing lotteries that under the law had the ability to be authorized to continue operations. Those were both authorized to continue operations, and those are airport lotteries designed to benefit the airports in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. But those are very limited raffle draw type lotteries, and the funds of those both go to benefit the airports. The only full-fledged, what we would call traditional lottery, is the UAE lottery, and then the Play 971 is the licensed online casino and sports wagering operator, and then of course the Wynn is the land-based operator. While other Emirates are taking a serious look at this and have their own processes to move forward, none of those have been announced. But you're right, it is limited to one online operator per emirate and one land-based operator per emirate. Sports wagering is a category of license that can only be obtained by a land-based operator or an online operator. And the reason for that is that we didn't want a situation where you get let's say you have a startup company and they become an online operator and they get a license. And then they say, we're going to start a sports book, but they have absolutely no capability or capacity to run a sports book, which is very different than running an online casino. And we didn't want that to happen. So we wanted a separate operational vetting process to make sure that the sports wagering operation met the GCGRA standards.
Brilliant. And so currently on the online side, like I say, Play 971 is the only licensed operator currently. And as far as I understand it, they are live in Ras Al Khaimah and also in Abu Dhabi, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Is there like a sub-license system to work with Play 71 to go live as well? Or is it strictly that brand that is able to go live now? It seems like my question alludes to a little bit. It seems like the market is not going to be a market for 100 operators, let's say. There seems to be a limited opportunity for just a few operators active in this market. And that seems to be the strategy of the regulator. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah, there is a policy that had been formulated and was still under development, frankly, when I left, that would allow the operator to have multiple skins, for instance. Now, how that's going to work was still being worked out. But I do think you can expect more than one brand in an emirate connected to that operator.
Brilliant. However, there seems, on the other hand, on the B2B side of the industry to be a lot more opportunity, right? There are quite a number of B2B licenses that have already been announced. Our good friends at Yolo, for example, are licensed. Many of the game suppliers are licensed as well. Talk about the B2B side, the approach to licensing B2B companies, and why is it that you are open to licensing so many more B2B operators, and what is the opportunity there for the B2B suppliers?
Yeah. The opportunity for B2B suppliers is unlimited, and the UAE was taking a very open approach, a very modern approach to new technology. If you heard me give any of my speeches while I was in the UAE, I repeatedly said that technology should lead and regulation should adapt. That it was time to take the handcuffs off the industry, that I was tired of hearing for 30 years that the gaming industry runs 3 to 5 years behind what's happening in the rest of the economy from a technology perspective because of regulation. I wanted the technology community to know that was no longer the case. That yes, we have technical standards that are widely accepted and a certification process that works. But don't let that limit you. Don't confine yourself to the box of existing technical standards. If you have an idea about a new game concept or a melding of game concepts that's never been tried before, that combines elements of skill with elements of chance, with augmented reality, if you want to develop a game that's played outdoors, don't worry about the technical standards. You bring us the technology, we will figure out a way to regulate it. And it was really going to be process driven. And so I think that we were on the cusp of seeing a lot of new businesses being formed in the UAE to take advantage of this. I think one of our great success stories is the UAE has the same problem that a lot of jurisdictions have, and that it had illegal operators. And we were rapidly ramping up our ways to combat those illegal operators, but it's an international problem. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to my work with the International Association of Gaming Regulators, is because of the incredible work that they're doing to collaboratively attack this illegal market. So we had an operator come to us that really wanted to invest in the UAE. They really wanted to make the UAE their home, but they had some ties to. They had a Curacao license, and they were operating in places where they would call it gray, but we would say, this is not something that we would allow from any of our licensees. And Tim Heath and his team did an incredible job. They said, you know what, we want to be in the UAE. We want to make this our home. We want to be on the cutting edge of new technology. We want to do something new. We're going to make a significant investment. We're going to sell all those businesses. We're going to divest ourselves from all those operator licenses that don't have a clear license in the jurisdiction where they're operating. And so the board was open to that, and Yolo was granted a license. They've made a significant investment in Abu Dhabi, and we expect them to be incredibly successful. And I think that's a great success story and an indication of what an embracing of technology can do. Look, I think that the regulators have come to appreciate, and I think policymakers need to start to realize that if technology can't find a reasonably efficient way to get to the marketplace in a regulated market, it's going to find other directions. It's going to find other channels. And so one of the challenges we have is not only to, tell illegal operators that are blatantly operating without a license that they know they need in a jurisdiction. We've got to take enforcement action against those. That's clear. But we've also got to make it a little easier for new concepts and new technology to make its way into the regulated market.
Yeah, it's such an interesting use case, right? Because that story that came out in beginning of September, I think it was, where Yolo announced essentially that they are taking a 180-degree turn and now entering a fully regulated strategy. A lot of people turned their heads and asked, what happened there actually. But as Tim has described in this podcast as well, and what you are saying now, it was literally the opportunity that they saw within the UAE opportunity. And you as a regulator with the GCGRA at the time, not the traditional regulator perhaps that only looks at what happens within the jurisdiction, but you also look at what your licensee holders, how they conduct themselves in other markets as well. Essentially gave that ultimatum to some extent, right? It's if you want to operate in this market, you need to operate as a regulated entity through and through, essentially. So that is also a prerequisite, right, for organizations that are looking to enter the UAE market, is that they first need to, look at how their businesses are structured internationally as well before they come to the UAE to apply for a license. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, the licensing process is very efficient. I think we tried to eliminate some of the kind of check the box redundancies of licensing processes, especially for experienced operators that have been licensed for decades in hundreds of jurisdictions. I mean, do we really need to see their original high school diploma again when it's been shown to so many other jurisdictions? But the line is clear. You can't rely on a license from one jurisdiction to operate in another jurisdiction where a license is required.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious as well, we haven't seen the entry into the market by the big dogs of the industry, the Flutters, the BetMGMs, if you will, or the kind of major publicly traded operators that operate across the world. I can only imagine that they have knocked at your door to understand this opportunity. Why is it that we haven't seen any major B2C brand entering the market so far?
Well, as I said, the only online Emirate, the only Emirate to embrace an online operator, to announce their selection for an online operator so far is Abu Dhabi. That doesn't mean there aren't processes going on in other Emirates. That doesn't mean that those operators aren't involved or engaged with those Emirates in discussions about entering the market.
Well done. Do you expect in the future that this kind of approach will change? That for the moment it's a kind of cautious approach with one operator maximum per Emirate. It feels almost like the policymakers are kind of ensuring that you kind of walk before you run, so to say. Do you expect that in the future this might be an updated policy?
Well, what I can say to the big operators is, although the UAE likes brands, I mean, they have a Cleveland Clinic, they have a New York University, they have a lot of major brands there. So that quality is of tremendous importance to anything that goes into the UAE. But they also expect long-term relationships. They expect a commitment to the UAE. They expect you to understand the UAE culture and what their objectives are, and to align with the direction, the policy direction of the government. And so it's not something where you drop in and say, I'm brand X, we're the best in the world, you should love us, and think that everybody's just going to, oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have you here. That's not the way it works. It's about building a relationship. It's about building trust. It's about alignment.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And my final question on the UAE before, I'm very interested as well to speak about your work with IAGR, but my final question on the UAE, if you were to make a pitch to the wider industry globally, who should consider applying for license in the UAE currently? Who is this jurisdiction made for currently? What type of businesses is the UAE looking for, and what is the opportunity at the end of the day here?
Yeah. Well, if you want to go to a place where opportunity is almost unlimited in the entertainment space, I think Las Vegas had somewhere around 40-something million airline arrivals last year. Dubai had over 80 million. Abu Dhabi just built a couple of years ago, less than 2 years ago, one of the largest, nicest airports in the world. Abu Dhabi has a bustling and constantly expanding cultural district that will be the envy of the world. They're building a Sphere. They have Disney coming. All the major brands in the world are in the UAE from an entertainment perspective. And if you want a regulatory structure that's efficient, that's transparent, where you understand where you know exactly what's expected of you, you know exactly how you're going to be measured, and you're going to be given a fair deal in a favorable tax rate. And if you want to go to a place where they're going to embrace new technology and give you the opportunity to have controlled experimentation with new ideas, to be able to entertain your customers and serve your guests more efficiently. And for vendors to not only be able to try new ideas, but have a global stage to showcase those ideas to the rest of the world, so that the UAE is not your only market, but that this is your global showroom that has the attention of the world with regard to its gaming industry. And the UAE is the place to go. I don't understand why anybody would not have this as among their highest priorities from a growth perspective.
Exciting, Kevin. So, Kevin, you had a long, successful career at GLI. And then, of course, you took on this incredible challenge to regulate the market that no one ever thought would become regulated in the UAE. You were successful in setting up the GCGRA, and afterwards you decided to leave to set up your consultancy group, the Mullally Group. And I know that one of the tasks that you took on now is, of course, as the CEO for the International Association of Gaming Regulators, the IAGR. Talk about your work, first and foremost, with the IAGR. What is the association looking to achieve? And you alluded earlier to kind of combating the illegal market and so on, but talk a little bit more about your remit at the IAGR.
Yeah, you don't meet many people that become gaming regulators, and you certainly don't meet many people that go from gaming regulator to private industry for 17 years and then decide to go back to being a regulator. But so I'm either flawed or I think what I would say is it points to my roots, the first 10 years of my career that people don't talk about very much. when I was chief of staff to a very powerful state senator in Missouri. And it was really in public policy, a broad array of public policy and healthcare, education, economic development, criminal justice reform. And so the IAGR opportunity, when I came back, I really didn't want another job. We have 5 grown children. We have 8 grandchildren. We have a wonderful, big, large family. And that was one of the main reasons for coming back home. But it was very compelling. I was on the board of trustees at IAGR, and I saw all the momentum we were building on combating the illegal market, on looking at more harmonization of regulation, at looking at new ways to measure outcomes for responsible gaming initiatives, and a lot of great things that were happening there, and that the opportunity to continue that development and help lead it on a day-to-day basis was compelling, and it's been fun. I've only been in it a little less than 2 months, I think, and we've made enormous progress. Our conference in Lima, Peru in October 19th through the 22nd in Lima will, I think, have the best agenda I've seen at any conference in 35 years. Very diverse array of subjects, the world's leading subject matter experts. We will be announcing some collaborative relationships in the coming months. We've got a revamped sponsorship program, so we will allow other stakeholders to participate. It's still going to be regulator driven, regulator controlled, and but we understand the benefit of involving subject matter experts and bringing additional resources to the table. So I think that you're going to see IAGR much more in the forefront of public conversation. We're going to have some incredible announcements in the coming weeks, and really looking forward to continuing the momentum and building straight through Peru and beyond.
Brilliant. I'm very, very curious to go back to your point earlier about combating the illegal markets. When I kind of like build a picture here, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on that. The industry, from my perspective, I'm speaking about the online gambling industry now, is splitting into very clear paths to what I can see at least, which is some operators are leaning into regulation and becoming kind of more and more strictly regulated, whereas other operators are going the other way and going into a more unregulated space. It used to be in the industry that we are kind of born out of the gray. There was no clear regulation in most jurisdictions, so most operators operated in that environment where it wasn't legal or it wasn't illegal either. But today, the fact of the matter is that most markets now have clear regulations. So either you are a regulated entity in that market or you operate as an unregulated entity. Now, in many regulated markets, the regulation seems to become more and more strict. We are reading articles almost on a daily basis with increased tax levels, more restrictions on the regulated operators. It becomes more strict marketing regulation as well. And so it's almost a feeling like the regulator is kind of chopping off a leg from the operator to operate and to operate effectively against the unregulated operators that don't have to pay taxes, they don't have certain restrictions, they can operate more effectively because they just don't have the same type of due diligence facing them. So I'm very curious in this context to hear you speak a little bit more about how do you combat the black market, because it almost seems to me, looking at the global industry, like that the black market is thriving, whereas the regulated side seems to operate under more and more tough conditions.
Yeah, I think that we're definitely seeing heightened conflict, and I think that sometimes the discourse conflates decisions made by policymakers and decisions made by regulators. With rare exceptions, very rare exceptions, regulators do not set tax rates. And so the tension there is something that regulators are often forced to implement. The other thing that we know that history tells us very, very clearly is that absent regulation, gambling operators will cheat consumers. There will be scandals, and eventually there will be a policy backlash, and gambling will be outlawed. I'm probably one of the few people that's old enough to remember Nelson Rose's. We're in the third wave of legalized gambling in the United States. That was completely banned twice before this latest iteration of widespread legal gambling that started, initially in Nevada, then many years later in New Jersey, and then many, many years later throughout the rest of the country, beginning in the late 1980s. And so when I look at things like prediction markets, who claim to be legal, claim to have the license and the authority to be able to do what they do, but have absolutely no consumer protections. There's virtually no friction in nearly all jurisdictions to be able to register as far as verifying your identity and your age, other than saying who you are and where you are. They don't use geolocation. They don't use advanced KYC. There's no protections for problem gamblers. There's no deposit limits. It's incredibly, I was the author of the first government self-exclusion program in the world. And I still get cards from people on the anniversary of their self-exclusion thanking me. Wow. Or emails. And that was 1995, 1996. And to have their own federal government come in and say, we know you took this difficult step of acknowledging that you have a problem with gambling, and that you admitted it, and you agreed to take personal responsibility for your conduct, and you self-excluded, and you committed to staying away from licensed gambling. And all you asked was for the operators not to market to you, not to entice you back, not to let you into their players' clubs, not to accept your credit cards. And if you were able to get around the controls and were able to somehow sneak in and get the opportunity to gamble, and you won a big prize where you were finally identified, the jackpot would be denied. And yet your own federal government says, yeah, but we're going to let these people entice you as much as you want, take as much money of yours as you want. They have no obligation to disclose any risk to you or advise you about the risks of problem gambling, or try to steer you towards a more healthy path. I don't know. I just don't see that as a long-term successful strategy. I think that that regulated gambling has shown its benefits. It's shown that it's sustainable. I think you do make a point, and it's a point that I myself have made, that we do need to find ways to make regulation more efficient, that we would benefit from more harmonization. You have to respect local cultures and the way local governments work, but many regulators are doing the exact same process in different ways. It's effectively the same thing. It's just done in 300 or 400 different ways. I think to the extent that we could harmonize the way those common objectives are done, that it makes it much more, it's almost like a tax reduction for the industry, because every time you have to engage in a different process for a different jurisdiction, I know this because I worked at GLI for 17 years. We dealt with 470 different gaming regulators, and there's cost associated with that. So by increasing harmonization, we can reduce costs. So I think that there will be an answer to this. I think, let's hope the answer isn't this kind of Wild West where you have either no consumer protection or consumer protections drafted by people who have no idea they have no background in gaming regulation or how to go about it. And it's going to take them years to do it. And how many people are going to be harmed in the meantime? And eventually there will be scandals and there will be backlash. And hopefully it doesn't bleed over to the entire industry. I think a sensible solution needs to occur, and I hope that IAGR can be at the centerpiece of that.
Right. have you seen any jurisdiction, any regulator implementing a particularly effective measure against the black market? Genuinely is something that has, been seen as a success story to combat that black market?
Yeah, I think there are, and I think it's building. I think the UK has done a good job with some of its enforcement cases. Ontario, Michigan, Denmark, the Netherlands. I think we've had some success in the UAE, but it's really the way it's ultimately going to have the maximum amount of success is a unified collaborative effort with some technology wrapped around it. Mm-hmm. We've got to start centralizing this data. We've got to be able to go to a handful of stakeholders who are helping to facilitate this and take that data to them and show them how they are supporting this illegal market and demand that they stop. Some of those stakeholders are under the control of regulators, other are not. But I think that there are mechanisms to be able to make it in their best interest to help.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems almost like most regulators until today have kind of worked in their own silos to some extent with their own approaches to combating the black market. And yes, once a year or a couple of times a year, the regulators meet in a room to discuss what they do. But what you are talking about now is to take that to the next level and essentially unify as many of the regulators as you can into a better approach that is wrapped in technology, as I point out, so that there can be more kind of shared efforts and more unified efforts in how to combat that black market, basically.
Yeah. Yes. I wrote a white paper on illegal and unregulated gambling in America, and it was released in March of 2020, which is right when COVID hit, by the way. But and at that time, and it was a very compelling piece on how we were on the cusp of something that I think you alluded to, that the illegal and unregulated market was growing so fast and becoming so significant that the regulated market was on the border of becoming irrelevant. And at that time, what I got from a lot of regulators was, yeah, but we just don't have the authority, and we don't have the tools, and local prosecutors aren't cooperating, or there were just a lot of failure to acknowledge. I can tell you unequivocally that is no longer the case. I don't talk to a single one of our members or any regulator around the world who doesn't identify this as their, if not their most significant problem in their top two. And so they are unified. The IAGR Illegal Gambling Working Group is very active. It is culminating in a lot of very actionable steps that we will be announcing throughout the summer and building right up to Peru. Our illegal gambling track is going to be one of the major themes of the Peru conference. It's a huge issue in South America, where we hope to attract a lot of new members. And again, we're working with various technology providers to. It's one of the fun parts of the other side of my business, the Mullally Group, is I'm working with technology providers to build some technology around this, to be able to give us the tools to do this more effectively.
Brilliant. One more question on the kind of IAGR and global regulation side. Then I would like to dive in a little bit more to what's happening else in Kevin's life and the Mullally Group. But I'm very curious to ask you as well. I mean, you mentioned prediction markets before. The life and death struggle almost that the American Gaming Association is in right now is incredible phenomena, to be honest. I mean, the AGA has a long history, right, of kind of unifying the regulated gambling industry in the United States. And almost overnight, the entire association fractured. DraftKings, biggest online gambling operator, have left the AGA. FanDuel, the biggest together with DraftKings, have left. Fanatics have left the association as well. What's happening there, Kevin? I mean, it must be. It's a pretty worrisome development in the United States, especially in how the regulated gambling industry is moving away from this unified front, where if you are an operator or if you want to operate a gambling business in the United States, it was de facto you kind of had to become a member of the AGA, whereas now that seems not to be the case anymore. Is AGA losing its teeth, do you think? What do you think will happen from here? And how do you interpret what's happening now?
Yeah, I think that the argument isn't, should there or should not there be gambling? It's whether or not you should have consumer protection, and are you going to respect states' rights? IAGR has filed amicus briefs in the Ninth Circuit case. We will be filing one in Massachusetts as well. We'll be involved in other cases. We present a very compelling argument about the importance of consumer protection and the sovereign ability of states and tribes to be able to declare what's going on in their own borders. So while I think that there is a healthy conversation that can be held around some harmonization of regulation and some ways to improve liquidity in the markets, Utah has the right to say no. Texas has the right to say no. And so California has the right to say no. We want to be able to protect our tribal industry. And if we are going to have online sports wagering or sports wagering at all, it's going to be under our terms. Now, having said that, I think that if we go about this in a healthy way and if sounder minds prevail, I don't think prediction markets are necessarily going to go away. I don't know that either side wins unequivocally. I think whoever comes up with prediction 2.0 that solves some of these problems and allows for better harmonization, better liquidity, but within the existing states' rights construct that we have, then to me that is a, no pun intended, winning hand. But to say, we're going to do something that was never envisioned by a federal law when it was written for markets that don't resemble any of the other markets that we have, and that looks exactly that is sports wagering, but we're not going to have any consumer protection, and we're not going to honor any state values. I think that's a difficult proposition to sell.
Yeah, is that the opposition that the AGA and the IAGR and others have against prediction markets? Is it specifically the sport markets, or there's also politics involved? There's world events at large. Obviously, if you go to Polymarket or Culture today, there's 1,000 different type of prediction markets. Some are sports and some are not. Where do you draw the line in kind of how this should be settled on a state by state basis versus on a federal basis? Because some prediction markets is a publicly traded company going to increase its value or not, right? Which seems to be more on the financial side. How do you view that? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, well, I've been involved in developing complex public policy since 1984, actually 1981, if you really want to go back to my early days. I don't have the answer for you today, but I can talk about a process. And that is that the regulatory community, the policymaker community, and the financial community and the technology community need to come together and have a serious debate about this. And it's very inefficient to have a policy discussion in court. It's very expensive. It takes a long time. So one of the things we're planning on putting together for the Peru conference is a gaming policymakers forum where we hope to attract policymakers, legislators, or legislative staffers from all over the world to come together and talk about this and other pressing policy issues that you've discussed today, and how they align with regulation. Because regulators, as I said, some things are in regulatory control, other things are not. Other things are dictated to them. And I think that those conversations need to happen in concert, not separately. And I hope that IAGR can be at the centerpiece of that, and that we can develop some sound, thoughtful policy that protects consumers, that allows for more liquid markets, that allows for greater efficiency in getting new technology to the marketplace, and everybody wins.
Yes, brilliant. Yeah, dialogue at the end of the day is what's needed here to clarify a lot of these complex questions. My final question to you today, Kevin, is just widening the scope again. You founded the Mullally group as well. Obviously, IAGR is one of the missions that you have within the group. But talk more about what you are focusing on right now, Kevin. What other jobs are you taking? What are you interested in? You mentioned technology here earlier. Talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned, when I came back to the U.S. to be with our family, I didn't want another job, and I wanted some flexibility. So I wanted to be my own boss. So actually, the Mullally Group came first. I founded that, and my first client was IAGR. But I'm very protective of the IAGR relationship. Any clients I take on have to align with good, sound regulation. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't really do any work that didn't. But I'm working with a lot of technology providers, some private equity firms and even operators and technology providers that are either working towards developing tools to make regulation better and more efficient, tools to make gaming more entertaining, or operators that just simply want to improve their compliance functions and be better or try to understand and enter new markets in a very compliant way. So it's been exciting. It aligns well with what I'm doing with IAGR, and I'm getting to see, our family with all the kids, their spouses and grandkids, and us. It's 20 people. So it's a lot of people to see, and I'm getting to see a lot more of them. And it's life is good right now.
You can almost organize a conference for the family. In other words, it's
we do. Our next family vacation is over Memorial Day weekend in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we have a house with 12 bedrooms, a pool, and a lake.
Amazing. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing all the insights into the UAE market, into future regulation, and the great work that you're doing in IAGR and beyond. Really appreciate everything that you've shared here today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pierre. And I want to take the opportunity to say hello to my team in the UAE. I'm proud of all of you. I couldn't be prouder. I wish you great success. You're under great leadership with the board, and I look forward to seeing the new heights you're going to achieve.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin.